I'm going to give you some information about what an intermediate advanced student needs to know in order to communicate better. These will not be the only things you'll need to learn, of course, but if you use this information as a foundation for learning, you will find that the whole process will go easier for you. At your level, the process isn't so much about learning vocabulary or grammar. It's about communicating effectively with the English you already know. In this presentation, I will go into 3 important elements to help you achieve that end. First, communicating well in English requires that you structure your sentences and questions well. I'm going to teach you several formulas that will help you with that. Secondly, you have to have a good handle on the tenses. You should know what each tense means, what their auxiliaries are, and which time markers signal which tenses. I've got some tools you will find very useful for that. Finally, it seems to me after many years as an instructor that students don't learn modals well and wind up using the modal auxiliary must too often, for example, when there are many more appropriate options available. Modal auxiliaries are very idiosyncratic, which probably explains why most students fail to use them properly. I'm going to touch on the weird world of modals and tell you where to go to get more info about them. During this presentation, I will go through these 3 main points and give you some rules, tips, and charts. If you master this information, you will find that speaking and comprehension will be much easier. Because English does not have verb endings that express the person who does an action, except in the case of the third person singular, he goes, he works, etc., English relies on structure to express who does an action. Most sentences, therefore, must have a set structure to convey that meaning and to separate them from questions which have a different form. We can express nearly every sentence and every question in English as 2 formulas. These formulas can be repeated multiple times to create a very long sentence. No matter how long the sentence is, it will almost always fit in one of the 2 formulas. With a little adjustment, we can create another special sentence, which I will include here, because it's important for medical professionals. This is the most basic sentence. Here we see that the person who does the action in the sentence comes first. We call it the subject. Then the action is expressed as a conjugated verb, and finally, in the event that the verb is a transitive, the object follows. The object is what receives the action. Note that I said immediately after. Normally you cannot put things after the verb unless they are objects. For example, you cannot say, I went with my friend to the store, because the object of where you go is the place you go. You say, I went to the store with my friend. Another common mistake is when you say, tomorrow comes my friend. I've heard that so many times, and it's wrong in so many ways. First of all, where's the subject? It's not tomorrow. Tomorrow is an adverb, except in sentences like that. Also, the object of the verb comes in that sentence, my friend, is the person who does the action, so it's in the wrong place. The correct way to say it would be, my friend comes tomorrow, or even better, my friend will come tomorrow, because we're dealing with a future event here. When you're speaking, try to start with a subject for now. Don't put words in front of the subject. For example, put time expressions on the end of the sentence. For example, tomorrow, next week, etc. To avoid confusion and to conceptualize the relationship between subjects and verbs better. This is the structure of a question in English. At first glance, it may seem a little complicated, but take a look at the 2 elements that are not in parentheses. The first element is the auxiliary verb, which sets the tense of the question. This always appears first if the question requires only a yes or no answer. Do you speak English? And will appear second if there is a question word involved, with a few exceptions. When do you speak English? The auxiliary is followed by the subject, and the subject is how you will begin when you answer the question. At the very beginning of the question, we have a question word. If you need a particular piece of information, what, when, or where. For example, a question word may be followed by a question word object. What time? Don't confuse question word objects with subject. In the sentence, what time is it? The subject is it, because it's in the place of the subject. It is 5 o'clock. Finally, after the subject in a question, there is frequently a verb. The verb does not get conjugated. Where do you go? Where did you go? Except in the perfect tenses. Where have you gone? Now, of course, there's much more to this, but those are the basics. We will go deeper into it in class. I'm including this structure in my presentation because it's important for medical professionals. It's a kind of sentence you will see in medical journals a lot. If you can see here, and the object of the sentence comes first, and that's the thing to be acted upon. The to be verb is the main verb in the sentence, the one that gets conjugated. The main verb of an active sentence is expressed as a participle in the passive, and the agent is the person who does the action, the subject of the active sentence. Let me show you how this works graphically. Here is a standard sentence. We talked about this already. The subject comes first, followed by the verb. In this particular sentence, the verb is conjugated for the past tense. After the verb comes the object. The passive begins with the object of the sentence. That is followed by the to be verb, which is the verb that gets conjugated. In this case, the verb is conjugated for the past tense because it was passed in the original standard sentence. The to be verb is always followed by a participle. The participle was the original verb in the standard sentence. The actual subject of the sentence goes on the end and is preceded by the word by, and we call that the agent. Let's talk a little bit about the tenses here. Students do not learn the tenses very well because they lack a way to organize the many and often contradictory rules governing their use. In effect, they lack the system for organizing what they learn. When you learn a tense, you need to keep three aspects of the tenses in mind. First of all, you need a clear idea of when to use the tense. For example, the present tense is used for habit and custom. The past tense is used for completed actions in the past. Each tense has its own auxiliaries. The auxiliaries for the present tense are do and does. The auxiliary for the past tense is did. Every tense is associated with several adverbs of time. When you see these adverbs, they tend to fix a sentence in a particular tense. The word usually is used for the present tense, while yesterday is used for the past tense. However, since yesterday or since 5 o'clock is used with the present perfect. Since is a time marker for the present perfect tense. Well, right now I'm going to play through a few slides which comprise a chart of the tenses. This is a work in progress, so it's not complete. If you are watching the video of this presentation, you can stop the video on each page to get a better look. The simple and compound tenses are included. Modals are very complicated to learn. In fact, they're actually modal auxiliaries, which means they have more in common with auxiliaries like do and did and will than they do with verbs. One of the things that complicates learning modals is the fact that every modal also has an alternative. For example, the alternative of can is to be able to. This confuses the situation. So, in order to sort out what is a modal and what isn't, we separate things that can act like a modal from things which are true modals. True modals never take infinitives. They use the root form of the auxiliary. We say I must go and not I must to go. Frequently, the negative of the true modal is not the opposite of its meaning. For example, if I say please go, it means you should leave. If I say don't go, it means you shouldn't leave. However, if I say you must stop, you are obligated to stop. If I say you must not stop, it does not mean that you are not obligated to stop. It means you are prohibited from stopping. I hope you can see the difference here. The actual opposite of you must stop is you don't have to stop. This is a subtlety which I hope to teach you during our time together. True modals cannot be conjugated for the past, with one notable exception, can. Can is conjugated as could in the past, but that's it. The past tense of must is not musted. True modals have different meanings in different contexts. For example, if I say you must see a doctor, it means that it is a necessity, an obligation. But if you walk into my class and your clothes are wet, I might say, oh, it must be raining. In this case, must is not an obligation or a necessity. It's a conclusion that I draw from available evidence. Other examples. You must be tired after being on call all night. That's a conclusion. You must eat healthy foods if you don't want to get sick. That's an obligation or a necessity. True modals have alternate forms that can be conjugated. I can't conjugate can for the future. I will can see you tomorrow. I can, however, say I will be able to see you tomorrow. Most true modals have an alternate that can be conjugated. I realize that all of this is quite a bit to take in all at once. We will get to the strange world of modals in due time. If you want to take a look at a presentation that's a little bit more in depth, you can go to my website in the presentation section and look for a presentation called Introduction to Modals. In conclusion, to speak English more effectively, it boils down to three things. Sentences and questions are controlled by formulas. Tenses are controlled by use, auxiliaries, and time markers. And true modals are idiosyncratic, but do follow general rules. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope you have a little better idea of how to think about English and what to expect to be taught during our time together. For more information about me and my classes, you can contact me on the web, subscribe to my Twitter account, or go directly to my presentation area where I have short presentations introducing different grammar points. Thank you, and I'll see you in class.